I looked every single one of them in the eye. I really tried to see from their perspective. I was prepared ahead of time.
I just became a slobbering, degenerate drunk that could barely function on the inside. On the outside, I looked fine.
Depression is. It is living in the past. When we're depressed, we're sad about something that happened.
True, yeah.
When we have anxiety, we're living in the future.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Breaking Point podcast. Used to be Rock Bottom podcast. We made a little switch. So Breaking Point podcast, where we try to talk about some of the hard things and some of the things that help us deal with the hard things. Right now I have Mayor of Bluffdale, Natalie Hall, a friend of mine for the last couple of years, and also an awesome person that's an advocate for our city. And we're going to talk about some of the things that she has dealt with in her political life, in her life leading up to politics, and just kind of reconnect and have some fun. So I appreciate you coming.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
So Natalie, thanks for coming. I appreciate you being here. I wanted to give you a little bit about me so we can talk and kind of have a candid conversation, because this is the Turning Point podcast where I address things that are a little bit tough for me to talk about, right? And I think like all of us have it somewhere in our lives, something that's difficult to express and say, like, that kind of gives me a little bit of anxiety to even think about talking about that. So a little bit about me, and I try to open up a little bit about who I am.
Well, then this is why I came. I want to know more.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's so much. I promise you, it's a Pandora's box. You really don't want to know all of it, but I'll give you a little bit. So, I was in the military for 12 years,
yes.
Right? The culture of the military is a hard culture. It's changed a little bit, right? And I talked about this a little bit in one of the last ones. But when I was in, it was like the culture to go to work, get done with whatever duty you had, and go start drinking with your buddies. And so that's what I did. Now I have, you probably don't know this about me either, but I have really bad, like high medically, diagnosed anxiety. I didn't know I had that then. I just thought I was scared of everything or uncomfortable all the time. And that still persists to this day. But as a result, I chose to drink, and I just became a slobbering, degenerate drunk that could barely function on the inside. On the outside, I looked fine, right? But on the inside, it was like tearing me apart. Not just like mentally, but also physically, just feeling sick and whatever else. So I got once arrested on the base for being too drunk. Like, I just lost the ability to function like a normal human being because I had that, you know what I mean? And so
that's pretty serious.
Yeah, it is. It was a totally serious problem. And I ended up kicking this, I'm 20 years next month sober, but it doesn't mean that I don't fight that battle every single day for 20 years, 365 days a year. I fight the battle of should I drink today or should I not every day. Right?
Of course.
It's like and so now that you know a little bit, you can kind of understand how candid I like our conversation to be, right? So I know you as the mayor of Bluffdale,
yes.
Right? So tell me.
I am your mayor.
I know. You're my mayor, and I love you for it, because the job is like, I wouldn't want your job. I'm sorry, I wouldn't,
The pay is great, let me just tell you.
Makes it all worth it.
It makes it all worth it. That $1,500 a month is really good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, you should be getting paid like 10 times that a month, right? Well, tell me, I just am curious, because there's a lot of things that lead to making a decision to run for mayor. You love your city, obviously, like you want to be great for the city, but there's more to it than that. So I'm curious, tell me, what was it that,
it's interesting. I don't think very many people grow up and think, I want to be a mayor. There, of course, as a child, many children say, I want to be president of the United States, but nobody says I want to grow up and be the mayor. And it was the same thing for me. I have a degree in business from the University of Utah, and my business degree, the emphasis is marketing. And I was really involved. We have 5 children. My husband and I have 5 children, and I had the opportunity to be flexible and be at home when they were younger, and had some opportunities to teach music and help at the school. And at the time when they were young, I actually served on the school board for our charter school. And that was my first introduction into public service. And that was an eye-opening experience. What does it mean to serve on a board? I had no idea. I had done a lot of community service, but serving on a board is a whole different thing because you have to make decisions, financial decisions, personnel decisions as a board and what that looks like. I learned a lot. I grew. I wanted to quit so many times, and that's really where it started.
That's all volunteer, right? Like
It's
that's
all volunteer. Yeah.
You're just putting yourself out there.
Putting yourself out there. And so I did that. And it was a growing experience. And then my youngest started kindergarten and I wanted to be a little bit busier. And I was already volunteering for the city. I was volunteering as actually in the emergency management in the program there as a neighborhood captain. We call them section leaders. And so I volunteered in that capacity and a part-time position became open. And so I decided, well, I can work for the city part-time. It's flexible. And so I went into the interview and they said, well, what do you know about emergency management? And I said, well, and they knew my degree was in business. And I said, I know nothing, but I can sell it. And they hired me based on that. And it was a great experience. But as I came into that, I also started doing their communications, which that was my real passion. My real passion was communicating and making sure our messaging for the city was right where it needed to be. And so I was just a part-time employee. And then the opportunity came that our mayor, who was fabulous, I mean, he had served 12 years, 3 terms. Everybody loved him. He did great things. And I asked him one day, I said, what are your plans? And he said, what are yours? And so it was just a good opportunity for me to continue serving the city that we've lived in now for 19 years and to continue that public service opportunity.
And you're running again for your second term?
I am. I'm running again for my second term. And so there's so much to learn and do and momentum that 4 years is just not quite enough to keep that momentum going on some of these big projects.
Yeah. So, okay. So had a pretty, so talking to you, right? You're a very positive person, right? You have this ability to make everything sort of just look rosy, right? But tell me the stuff that didn't smell like roses. Like when let's talk about the school board job.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. I remember one experience where we were over different areas of the school. And my assignment, I had some people under me and they maybe didn't follow through as well as they needed to. And I was blamed for that. And I was really upset about that. And then now looking back, of course, that was my responsibility to make sure those people followed through on what they had been assigned. And I just assumed they would take care of it. And that was I just remember being so angry. I was being blamed for something that I didn't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Isn't that
interesting? I really didn't, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't follow through enough. I didn't, maybe I wasn't a good enough mentor. Maybe I didn't have the right vision. And so I look back and I think that was really hurtful, but I was in the wrong.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's tough to look at those situations, at least for me. Now I'm not I'm not like a super positive person. I have to try to be, right? I have to really
You're
have
a
to
glass half empty guy?
Kind of, maybe 3, I've kind of always had that,
Sure.
thing where
It's a personality, right? It's how we come. We come to this earth that way.
Yeah. Right. And so for me, like looking at something like that, I would have been, you're a positive person. I'm going to tend to be a little bit, I might have said like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is stupid.
Oh, for sure. But I have learned what happened back then, what it is called now, and it's called grit. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see it through. In fact, maybe it's pride, and that's not necessarily a good thing, but I wanted.
And what you do though is a good thing.
It can be
having like serving and saying I helped
did well.
Accomplish this and I did well.
Sure.
Right.
But I think I think grit is a really good word. I wanted to see it through all the way to the end. And I also didn't want to have regrets. yes, I don't want to look back and say, I regret. There are things that I look back and I say, I regret. And that is the worst feeling to have.
Yeah. So you bring up an interesting point because you do have a lot of grit. In order to do what you do right now with the people and the things that happen, I've seen it happen personally. You got to have a lot of grit. Going back further with you, where do you think that, like, what experiences gave you that desire to see hard things through? Because a lot of people just don't have that. And there, I think somewhere along the line you form that. You have a challenge or something that says, I'm not going to back down from this. And it's a rare quality and you have it. So I'm curious, like, is there a time, like a turning point, right?
Sure.
Where you felt like, I'm not going to back down. And that's sort of how the mantra that you live by now.
That it's really interesting because I really do believe people come, they are born with these personalities and you can take them down one path or another. And there are so many paths of choice as we go down. I remember my parents, when I was very, very young, I just was combative constantly with my parents. I mean, it was nonstop, even as a young child. And my parents just couldn't figure out how to control a child that came to earth with this personality. And I remember when the color code came out years ago and they had me take this color code test and I was a red, which is type A, right? And they all of a sudden had this aha moment of, this is who she is. But they had to also guide me in behaviors that were not appropriate, that also were compassionate. And so being able to take those paths and being able to say, okay, I have this personality, but what does make me want to follow through in the end? What gives me that grit? And I would just say it's all the little experiences as we go down the road that have given me just different viewpoints.
Yeah.
We could talk about all of them. There's so many, right?
Well, let's talk about a few. Like, tell me, because there's got to be a few that stand out. There's a few for me that stand out when I think back, and the path that I ended up on and kind of where I am now. Definite sort of breaking points. One, breaking point where I was just in the depths of awfulness that I had to make a choice. Do I stay there or do I move? And then the kind of point that sent me down that path, right? I think there's always a few that sort of stand out that say, okay, this was formative.
Yes, I would say one of the things I'm most proud of is graduating from college. And I know for a lot of people that just isn't a big deal. But for me, I had to pay for my own schooling. I didn't have a scholarship. I worked full time. I didn't take out student loans. And I put myself through school. And for me, paying for it all up front, studying and getting my degree, which, I had to take quantitative analysis. That really isn't my thing. I don't really love math.
Statistics.
I don't love statistics. It's okay. But I had to do all of those things. And it really took grit to see it through, to go all the way to the end and graduate. And for me, that is one of the things I'm most proud of, is finishing school. And like I said, for some people, that's just, they did it and it wasn't that big of a deal for them. But it was a big deal for me to finish school.
Well, you had a lot more on the line than most people. Like, a lot of people have their parents pay for it or they take out loans. It's easy, it's simple. They're not thinking about all that
Or they
stuff.
worked really hard in high school and got that scholarship.
I got the scholarship, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And that wasn't me.
Exactly.
I was kind of the same. I had to do it all myself. But I waited until much later in my life. Did you go right after high school?
I did. I did. I just went right after high school and worked and tried to make it through as fast as possible because that was my goal. I could see the end and I wanted to make it to the finish line.
See, that's a rare quality too, especially for someone young, like 18 years old. They don't really have, a lot of times 18-year-old people do not have that desire to like just go out and just hammer out an existence. Right? Most of them are like, we're still kids at 18 years old.
Yeah.
So you sort of like, you exhibited that quality pretty early in life to just go and like do things, hard things.
Yeah. Do hard things, all hard things. I love hard things.
Yeah. You must love hard things.
I love hard things.
You are a glutton for punishment.
Yes.
Yeah. But I love it because, you really do the things that you do for our city, obviously. Like that's, you have a vision for the city that is not just for a certain group of people, but it's for everybody.
Right.
And maybe they don't see that, but that's, so when you're sitting up in our city council meetings and you have people that are upset, tell me, you handle everything well. You run the meetings, and it's your like it's your meeting, right? And I love it when people are out there and you have to respond in sort of a way that's politically correct, right? What are the things that are happening in your mind? Like, just tell me, when the hard things are being said.
So, yes. So, several times I have had people come and we have public open comment. We have a period where people come and say whatever they would like to say for 3 minutes if it's not on the agenda later on. A couple years ago, I had an impression that a group of people were going to show up at council meeting, and it was going to be hard. And it was almost 2 hours of hard. And people asked me to resign. People were angry. People didn't know the truth. People didn't understand. They just rallied. It's interesting. Anger somehow draws. It's like a magnet. People love contention and anger, and they are drawn to it. It's a power, right? And it is very powerful. And so people who are missing things in their life and they need something to fill them, they are drawn to that power. It's just the craziest thing. So I had this impression, this group of people, they were going to show up. And for 2 hours, I looked every single one of them in the eye. I tried to. A lot of them wouldn't look up at me. They just read what they had pre-planned. And in my mind at the time, because I had been prepared that they were coming, I really tried to see from their perspective. I was prepared ahead of time.
Yeah.
And so I tried to see their perspective. If this were true, it does seem grievous. If it were true, they must really love their city to be brave enough to come to a council meeting and say all those horrible things that they said. Because I would never be brave enough to say anything like that to another person. I don't know if it's brave or just cruelty. But at the time, I just really tried to see each person as an individual and listen. But at the end of the 2 hours, however long it was, and I don't usually make comment at the end of public comment time because it's not on the agenda. And so it's not really an appropriate time to talk about what was brought to us. We bring it back to staff and then we reach out later and we communicate with those who had come. But at this time, I had prepared a statement, and I just said, we are so fortunate to live in this country that you could come to this meeting tonight without fear and stand at the microphone and say anything you wanted, true or not. We are blessed.
Yeah. Did you get a response from the people in the crowd? Or was it just silence?
I think it was pretty silent.
That was their response.
That was their response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They expect you to be upset or
Upset, crying, angry, bitter, retaliate, make public comment, contact the news, whatever it was. They had the news there.
Is that right?
They did.
Oh.
They invited the news. And at that point, you just have to decide who you're going to be in the hardest of times. But fortunately, I was prepared before they came, so I was able to figure out how I was going to handle it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So taking that high road it gives you power because you're not getting pulled into that sort of anger vacuum that you were talking about, and it just sort of sucks, it's like a black hole, it just sucks everybody in, right?
It also helps me, what I had said before, not go to bed with regret or down the road or 6 months later. I don't want to have regrets on things that I say or do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because there are things in my life that I'm I guess ashamed of.
Sure.
Right? Like I wish that I had done something different, but also it's funny because I've learned this whole regret thing because I look back at the hard times and the like dark times and the things that I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was part of my story.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But I also look back and I think, okay, so every single thing that's happened in your life or mine has brought us to where we're sitting right now, right? Mm-hmm. Like every decision, every thing has brought us to where we are talking about what we're talking about right at this moment. And I have to always remind myself, am I happy with my life the way it is right now? And there really hasn't been a time since I gave up all those awful things
Interesting.
that I haven't been happy with where my life is right now. So I can't look back with regret. I look back with a little bit of shame and embarrassment sometimes, right? With the things that I've told you just a little bit, just the tiniest little bit. There's some spicy stuff back there, And so it sounds to me like, you kind of sort of have the same thought, just regret is something that we want to avoid, right? But I think if, the perspective is, are you happy with where you are right this moment? And you're running for mayor again, so you got to be, either crazy or happy, or maybe a little bit of both,
A little bit,
right?
yes.
So maybe there's not a whole lot of regret back there, but just, you're happy where you are. And I think that you've sort of like lived your life avoiding regret, right? And so you can feel good about where you are right now.
I certainly have had a lot of regret,
Yeah. Tell me.
from my teenage years and things like that. But I want to just mention something that you said about the now. I think living in the present is the hardest thing we do as humans. Living in the present is so hard because really we know what the definition of depression is. It is living in the past. When we're depressed, we're sad about something that happened.
True. Yeah.
When we have anxiety, we're living in the future. We're worried about what will be.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Right?
That's how I live my life.
Yes, you're living in the future constantly. Living in the present is the hardest thing we do as humans. And
you're right about that. I hadn't really thought about that.
That depression is truly all about the past. You think of everything that makes you sad. I ate that bucket of ice cream by myself, right? That is depression.
Yeah.
That is living in the past.
Mine is a pizza, not ice cream. I ate that whole pizza. What's wrong with me?
But everything that leads to depression is about the past, and everything that has to do with anxiety is about the future.
It's a really good perspective. I hadn't really thought about that, but it's, whenever I'm freaking out about something, it's never something that I really know. My body is designed to freak out. It's just different. Like I call it a little bit of a broken brain. It just sort of does what it wants when it comes to that stuff. But you're right.
For sure.
I'm not worried about the things that are happening right this second.
You're worried about what's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or not to be.
Yeah.
Or how will that work out?
Yeah.
Or how will I get there? Or what is that going to look like? Or how long will it take me? Those are all things for the future. And so living in the present is my goal. And I have to work really hard at it too.
Yeah.
Because living in the future is a constant state for me. I'm not so much in the past, but the future I am. So some people deal with depression and some people deal with anxiety. And it's just living in the present is what I'm trying to work on.
Yeah.
And the here and the now. And looking back to regrets. I have regrets of which boy I kissed or, made out with or,
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
All the things in the past.
Yeah,
We have regrets.
I guess that's true. There are
Right.
things, but I guess I have to say, sure, it didn't affect my trajectory in life, and I maybe shouldn't have been so stupid, but yeah.
But right, I love what you said, the here and the now. Right. And that's really what I want to continue to focus on because I have missed out on so many now moments worrying about the future. And so then
you're a worrier.
I
Just it's
if
okay.
I had to choose between depression or anxiety, I would say I'm more of an anxious because I'm always thinking of the future.
Yeah. Well, and you're kind of how you are, like in the career path that you've chosen.
Sure. And there is a little bit that we do need to look forward, but really it is about how can we live in the moment and enjoy what we have, and it's gratitude. Yeah. My husband says this all the time. He says that we need to do better at teaching our children the now of gratitude.
Yeah. It's interesting. My kids, so I think they're so much smarter than I am. I don't know how, if I was a teenager now, I was already useless as a teenager back then when things were easier, and my kids, but they are so good at recognizing things that I didn't recognize at their age. They've sort of been forced to grow a little bit, emotionally and mentally and things that that we didn't have to do as kids. Like it was a little simpler to like stay out till dark riding your bike and not have the internet and not have the things like,
Yeah,
sort of pulling on you in every
exactly.
direction. You know what I mean? So it's funny you bring up kids because they, sometimes I think they're better at it than I am, just better at just enjoying. I have to tell them, enjoy being a kid. I think every kid needs to know that because everyone's looking, I can't wait till I'm an adult. I'm like, why? You don't enjoy summer vacations?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. When I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to have to work every day.
Yeah.
Right?
Living in the moment, teaching our children to
Yeah.
live in
Like
the
live
moment,
now.
live
Yeah.
for the now,
Yeah.
and planning for the future is important. But yeah,
Yeah.
our kids are so smart, and in fact, I've talked to my kids so many times about, do you have control? Do you have control over that person? Do you have control over this situation? I keep asking them and reminding them, what do you have control over? And I learned that yet first as a new parent. We started out with 2 babies, and I learned really fast. I had zero control, right? Of
Yeah.
when they ate, when they slept, when they cried, all of it. I had zero control.
Yeah.
And so really I constantly am asking myself, what do I have control of? And I have control of how I feel, how I treat other people. I have so much control over that. So I think that's what I keep focusing on because I need to know what I can control and what I can't.
It's really smart. Like it's nice to get a perspective from somebody who's a bit more put together than I am. Because
I don't think so.
because, like me, I tend to like, I can just fly into a panic attack. Like, these things, not so much now. I've learned ways to manage
Sure.
my, sort of internal temperature when it comes to feeling a little, crazy, not crazy, like, crazy,
Sure.
but just feeling like I'm losing a little bit of control. I've sort of been able to recognize that, but it's nice to hear like, okay, this is what I want people to understand, that even, like every single day you have to focus on being positive, being, focusing on what you can control and
right.
doing, like making conscious decisions to do that. When I think about my days, man, I mean, sometimes I feel in control and other times I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening today? Like
Yes.
nothing, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so you probably have days like that, but it sounds to me like is that how you approach those sort of chaotic days? Like, what can I control?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And being able to my favorite quote is, you must be the change you wish to see. And I think about that all the time, that if I want someone else to change, I can't control them. I can't control their attitudes. I can't control their backgrounds, their life experiences. I can't control any of that. I can't control any of those people that came to council meeting to say all those horrible things. All I can control is myself, how I handle myself, and how I even think about them, and all those things.
Yeah.
So,
Because you're still like, you're the mayor for them too, right?
for sure.
Yeah,
This is their city too.
yeah. That's, I think, the hardest part about, it's hard not to hold a grudge against people that are mean to you, but you still do the work on behalf of them no matter what.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I
You don't hold a grudge.
I don't have their life experiences, and they don't have the whole picture, and I just have to have compassion that they're just trying to do the best they can do as well.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like, so there have been times in my life in the jobs that I've done, I was a trauma like medic in a ER that was like, blood and guts.
Did you do that for the military?
I was a hospital corpsman in the Navy.
Okay.
That's a medic, but where I really saw the awful things was actually outside of that. It was a inner city county hospital in Fresno, California, where like, there's just gang, as we call it,
Right.
a knife and gun club, right?
Inner city, right.
Yeah. And so like I felt like at that time I was losing my sort of compassion for humanity just because of all the like just awful things and just the
Over and
experiences.
over and over and over. Absolutely.
And you get kind of beat up like that in your job. Do you ever feel like you have a hard time sort of holding on to that compassion, or do you really stay focused on that?
So I think my job, it is a little bit different than being in an emergency room. I have a brother-in-law that's an ER doctor in an inner city emergency room. And that perspective is really, it's common. because you just see the bad all day long, over and over and over. That is really, really hard to combat. But in my job, I mostly see the good all day long, right? I have these amazing business owners that I get to meet with in our city that are they're living their dream. And they get excited and they get to show me their dream. I get to meet with residents who are living their dream, and I get to meet with them about their fence and their yard and their dogs and their streets and their water and whatever their problems are. But in the end, they have a home and a community, and it ends up being a positive thing. I'm meeting with veterans and volunteers who are working for our city. And I mean, almost everything I do, I'm meeting with other mayors and legislators. Almost everything I do is positive. And so when the negative things come, and sometimes they come fast and they come hard, I just really try to keep the perspective of, I chose to do this job. I chose to live here. And I chose to be in this situation. So I can choose how to handle it.
Yeah.
For sure. So most of my job is positive. I feel like it's so different than being in an inner city emergency room, because you do see the continual homelessness and the addiction and the life circumstances that are so unfair.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's so unfair, and it's hard to reconcile that.
Yeah, I just drank all the time.
I mean,
like every day.
I mean, seriously, there are so many days I think, and I have said this to my husband, I am so grateful I'm not a drinker, because I would be an alcoholic.
Right? Just putting up.
Yeah. I absolutely would be, because, and I have other vices and that I'm trying to work through, eating the bucket of ice cream is not healthy. Right. Yeah. And, I think there's just other ways to deal with stress that are healthy, and sometimes we don't choose them.
Yeah.
But that is there are so many injustices in this world.
There really are. It's interesting. I mean, like for me, it was, you see all that stuff and you try to compartmentalize hard things. I already have an issue with like just dealing with things as it is. I have to medicate myself. And now I medicate myself with the right things. But back then I medicated myself with the wrong things. So it made
trial
things,
and error, Eric.
Yeah.
Trial
I was like,
error.
let's try this medicine. Let's try this medicine today.
I'm still trial and error today on how to deal with things healthy way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you I mean, you like to eat eating is another thing for me. I love eating, and I don't necessarily stress eat, but I do eat, not just, it's like for enjoyment, it's kind of a vice, right? What other things do you feel like kind of,
I teach teenagers, actually, religious classes, and I teach seminary. And a lot of time we talk about healthy ways to deal with stress. And of course, the most healthy way to deal with stress is exercise. It is the number one best way to deal with stress. Get out, run, walk, move your body. Another really healthy way is to talk about it, or deep breathing. There's all these healthy physical ways that we should be dealing with stress. So instead, I'll watch a movie or be on my screen or scroll or do those things that we know that screen time actually damages our brain and it causes more stress. Yeah. So why do we turn to those? Because those release fast chemicals. And exercise is just harder.
Yeah, right.
So I'm like,
I don't want to get the exercise high. That's going to take too long.
So it's all about those choices and saying, what healthy thing could I be doing instead to deal with my stress?
That's kind of like when I quit drinking. I quit drinking and I quit smoking on the same day, and never touched it again. And it's been miserable ever since. Okay. I mean, I have good days and bad days, but I did turn to exercise, and it's been kind of a constant thing for me, that part. And I have 2 hours in the morning that I go to the gym every single, sometimes I skip. Most days. And like my kids have asked me to go with me. And I just tell them, no, it's not because I want to be selfish, but like
this
that's
is my mental
time.
health time.
That's the time where if I
will be a better person. Yeah.
Because I have to reset, or I have to get set for the day, right?
Exactly.
It's kind of like one of those wind-up toys. I have to wind myself up every day just to like get moving, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
That and books and things that I can listen. I don't read the books because I have ADD, so I can't sit there and actually read a book.
But listening.
but listening.
It's such a
is-
more it's more healthy than looking at a screen.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Well, it's funny because I served on the committee that you asked me to serve on last year, and like
Yes.
sitting there, and
That was a huge commitment, by the way.
it was fun
Thank
though.
you so much.
Yeah, no,
No one knows how many hours of commitment that is.
it was a lot of fun, but I will tell you that it was a challenge to sit down and like read the proposals. Like nobody was reading it to me, like an audiobook.
Like,
I
what?
was like, son of a, I actually have
did I
to
get
read
my-
this stuff.
What did Mayor Hall get me into? Yeah, so actually I think that committee is really interesting because it's about this funding that we use to for housing and deep needs in our county. And everybody wants a piece of the pie. So you were on this committee to go through and say there's just this much money and there's this much of a request. So you have to narrow it down to which homeless shelter and that's a gut-wrenching job.
Heart-wrenching, yes, because you want to give money to everybody, but also heartwarming because I think that people, like when you really sit down and like dissect that.
Because they're all volunteer organizations.
Right. Yeah. And there were some I was like, okay, it was difficult to say no to people. But on the other hand, it also felt really good to allocate money to people that I knew were helping other people, The hardest part was sitting down and reading the proposals. You know what I mean? So
Noted.
Yeah.
So no one really knows the sacrifice that you made.
Well, yeah, that I personally, because with this broken
Exactly.
brain, just like I got to sit down and actually read hours worth of
And
proposals.
so because you did that, you must feel so much pride to say, I
Yeah.
did the hardest thing. It's not my thing.
Sat at a computer and I read
Had proposals.
for hours proposals. That's for me. It's like an accomplishment. Maybe somebody else would be like, "This
And
is
it's like college for me. It was a huge accomplishment for me. And doing that committee, being on that committee, that I can't tell you how grateful I am.
Oh, I appreciate you asking. It was a lot of. It was kind of fun. I really enjoyed it, and it was. It's nice because it was at a weird time during the day, and they would let me Zoom in instead
that's
of like
great.
go to
Yeah.
the.
Yeah.
I would have probably
We have
lost
day
it.
jobs.
Yeah, I would have probably lost it if I was like trying to leave my job and go out there. So that was
great.
nice. It was a
Well,
lot of fun
thank you.
though. Yeah. So tell me, you're running again, and I know with this, it's kind of just kicking off.
Yeah.
What was it? What went into that decision?
So there are so many projects in a growing city. We have some big things coming up, and it's that little grit, right? It's that grit part of me that wants to see things through to the end. And I told my husband, I said, I don't have to run again. I would like to. How do you feel about it? And of course, he is 100% behind whatever I want to do, just like I'm 100% whatever he wants to do. Back in the day when he was training for his 5 Ironman races, and that's a full-time job, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And that's a lot of work. And so he said, whatever you need to do. And I just said, I want to see it through. And I want to show everyone, whether they agree with me or not, whether they like me or not, that I am here committed to see these projects through. We have a one-way bridge in Bluffdale.
Yes,
and
we do.
That is a very exciting project. And Union Pacific, they are a good old boys club. They've been around since 1800s, right?
My dad retired from UP.
Yeah.
Like and you're right. It is like
they were part of the Transcontinental Railroad, the Golden Spike. They were part of all of that. They have been here from the beginning.
Wow.
Changing construction methods with the Union Pacific is unheard of. It's not done. We have an engineer from Italy. He was born in Italy and he lives here and he's an engineer for our city. And it was going to be millions of dollars, like an extra $20+ million to build what Union Pacific requires. A shoe fly. You have to build another train line.
Oh, wow.
And then the money is thrown away because you tear it out. And none of us could even stomach that. How can you build this and then just tear it down? So in Europe, what they do is they suspend the tracks as you push these big boxes under as the train is moving. They do it in Europe. It's the craziest thing.
Huh.
Union Pacific, we are at 100% submittal. It is the first time in the United States that this project, now they have done a project in Canada like this, but this will be the first project in the United States with
Right,
this method.
right in little old Bluffdale.
Exactly.
That is awesome.
Thank you.
Love that. I did not know that.
I'm going to write it about it this month in my mayor's message, but it is that project and several other projects that I would love to see through. And I think they're important. I think they will make a difference, not just for our community. I mean, this project will make a difference nationwide.
Oh yeah, when people start adopting the methodology.
method.
Yeah.
And so there's good to be done, and I want to see it through.
Plus, how many tractor trailer, trailers can you see smashed under that thing before you're like, okay, come on.
seriously.
Like,
Seriously.
that's more danger to the trains than the doggone.
It's such a bummer when you're behind that truck and you think,
No.
I just lost 4 hours of my life.
Yeah, because you can't get out.
You can't get out.
You're
You can't
stuck.
back down.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You're committed.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's. I can see that, and I know it was funny when I moved to Bluffdale. I've only been there, gosh, it's like 4 years now. I think a little over 4 years. Is that right? Yeah. Wow. It's been. Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes by pretty quick. But when I went under that, because I had never been down that, just sort of checking out the city, and I went down there. I'm like, oh my gosh, why is there a stoplight
In the
this
random road.
Yeah. And then I realized there's cars coming the other way. Oh, I get it.
This is a one-way bridge.
Yeah, yeah. Then the one. Thankfully, I obeyed the law there on the traffic. It would have been ugly.
We are glad you did too.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm super thankful for you to be here, and I think we've met sort of, I guess, out of duty.
I
or
think you ran for
served.
city council.
I did, yeah, I did, and I learned that that's something that I don't ever want to do again, and I just don't. For you, it was it's invigorating. It's something that you feel a purpose in it. For me, people are so mean.
It's so true.
They're so mean.
I remember canvassing one day, knocking doors. And someone really did slam the door in my face.
My
And
goodness.
I was actually surprised that really was a thing.
Yeah.
Because not in my wildest dreams have I done that to someone else. And so I just was surprised.
Yeah.
For sure. And boy, I have learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
So
You've learned more grit.
I've had to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you
Thanks for
spending the
inviting me to come. It's been really great to be with you again.
time. Good to see you.
Yeah.
And I'll be at your campaign kickoff.
Great. I'd love to have you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good. Thanks.
Okay.
Natalie.
See ya.
Appreciate you.
Bye.